everyone, and welcome back to Horse Center. I'm Wild Jamie, and with me is the amazing Swiss Army Sean, my wonderful co-host, and our special guest tonight is someone we are thrilled to speak to. That is attorney for the Jockeys Guild, Mindy Coleman. Welcome to the show, Mindy.
Thank you. Thank you guys for having me tonight.
Sean and I have been so excited for this because we haven't had anyone specifically from the Jockeys Guild on here. We've heard a lot about it from, riders who appreciate all the things you guys do, but it's so cool to get a more inside view of exactly everything you guys do. It's a lot. So we'll definitely get into all that. But first, a little bit about yourself. Have you always been interested in horse racing?
Yeah, I grew up in the Pacific Northwest. And my parents, I grew up riding horses. Most of my family rodeoed. I was the odd one and decided I wanted to join pony club and ride dressage and jumping horses. So horses were my life. I literally was on the back of a horse at about, I might have been 2 weeks old. And my mom took me to go see my uncle at the feedlot. And long story short, I ended up going off on a horse with him. He had to go chase a bull. So literally my whole life has been on horseback. And then when I was about 8 years old, I told my parents I wanted to be an attorney in Kentucky because of the horse industry. And at that time, a lot of the big farms had their own in-house counsel. And I kind of had this idea of what I wanted to do. I thought I was going to be representing the horse farms and the owners and being a little bit different. And even at one point, I thought maybe I'd be on the sport horse side just because I'd be doing business transactions and other things as I got older. So I moved out to Kentucky in 2004 and finished my last year of law school in Kentucky so I could get settled and get acclimated to study for the bar. And the rest, here I am.
Very cool. So how did the Jockeys Guild tap you? Did you seek that out or did they seek you out? How did this partnership begin?
They actually sought me out. Terry Meeks, who was our national manager at the time, and they changed his title, but he's the president and CEO, was speaking with Kristen Warner, who is counsel for the Jockey Club, and a gentleman named Dan Fick, who was with the Jockey Club at the time and has since been a steward and been with various organizations. Terry had reached out to them and said, is there somebody like Kristen that, is really passionate about racing, that's young, that would be interested in joining on as counsel for the guild? And so this was in September. At that point, my life had kind of changed. When I moved out here, I actually opened my own practice right out of law school. And I had focused primarily on bankruptcy and construction litigation.
Oh.
And was kind of in the process of giving up on my idea or dream of being in the horse industry, getting ready to move to Texas. Things were there was nothing that was going to be, I didn't think I would still be here. So Terry reached out to me and we had an interview and multiple interviews, and they decided that I was the right fit, I guess. They said I was very passionate, even though I didn't have any labor law experience at that point. So
very cool. And you are very passionate. You and I were talking earlier, I think that you're one of those people who has a problem saying no. You do a lot of extra things other than just your job title. You pretty much do whatever people ask of you and really go out of your way to promote the industry and to help the jockeys in particular in every way possible. So that's much appreciated, of course.
Terry gets on me every once in a while. He's like, you need to learn how to say yes less. You got to start saying no. I'm going to we got to shut you down. But fortunately, he's pretty understanding. I do take on. He lets me get away with volunteering and doing a lot of the other things I can do to help the riders.
Oh, for sure. I love it. I mean, I love seeing all the places you go and the things you do. I'm like, oh, this is exciting. But let's get into the Jockeys Guild a little bit. So for people who don't know what the Jockeys Guild is about, because we do have a lot of people who watch the show who aren't really in the industry, they're just fans. So the Jockeys Guild is really the only representation that jockeys have, where they're all together in a cohesive unit, trying to work with management, trying to work with regulating bodies, trying to, go between all of these different things to have their needs heard and to have their concerns brought up. The Jockeys Guild they do a lot. So if you wouldn't mind, just go into a little bit about what the Jockeys Guild does to help jockeys out.
So one thing, and this is the way I describe it, you said there's some people that might not be familiar with racing or the how our industry works, because it can be very confusing. We have all sorts of different levels and the alphabet soup, which are all the different organizations, and there's so many different aspects. So for people that are not in racing, the best way I describe the Jockeys Guild is we're essentially the players association, what the players association would be for other athletes, other professional athletes. Because quite frankly, that's what jockeys are. They are professional athletes, and we continue to strive and to make sure that they're recognized as such. And so what we do is we provide a voice and representation for the riders, both on the state and now federal level. We work to make sure that they, whether it be with the horsemen themselves when we do negotiations, for example, with their losing mount fees, or rule changes that are happening throughout different jurisdictions. And then again, as I said, the federal, the way HISA has been implemented, which is the Horse Racing Integrity and Safety Authority, for those that are not every day in the sport. That was a new federal or a new private entity that's been established by the federal government to oversee certain aspects pertaining to safety and medication regarding horse racing. The benefits that we provide directly to our members are, we have various benefits, but that includes temporary disability in the event that the riders are injured, either in the morning during exercise or training hours, or in the afternoon, or, during racing. Life insurance and accidental death and dismemberment benefits. That is a 24/7 coverage that's on and off the racetrack. We have sponsored a retirement plan. It's a solo K for those riders to be able to contribute, or our members to be able to contribute, so that they have a retirement plan in the future. And then representation. I've said that a couple, and it's different areas in which we represent them, but one of the other things is, for example, when a rider is called into movies, or that means if they had a riding infraction the day before, or something that the stewards believe that they need to discuss with them. Whether it is our regional representative or room reps, we have room reps that are jockeys that are in that particular colony, are designated as the Jockeys Guild room representatives. They will go in with those riders and present their case, if you will, to the stewards, in hopes that, that they have an understanding, and they can explain what happened during the race, or what happened and caused them to do whatever's in question. And then for our riders that become, in the event of like a catastrophic injury, there are qualifying members, they're eligible for certain benefits. That, we are able to provide those. Now, that is separate than what is known as the PDJF, or the Permanently Disabled Jockeys Fund. We work very closely with them, but we are completely two separate organizations. They are a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and they actually provide monthly stipends to Guild and non-Guild members that have suffered catastrophic injuries on the racetrack. And those typically are the spinal cord and or brain, or traumatic brain injury.
Yeah, and I mean, these benefits are so incredible. I've been around horse racing my entire life, and I just know like how much it has been such a help to so many people I know personally. The temporary disability, just knowing that you have something coming so you can have some bills covered, that's huge. That is just beyond huge. I don't think that people realize you'll never miss that couple bucks out of a mount. But then when you need it to turn around and have something there, that's incredible. And then, like the representation, because a lot of times there can even be issues with language barriers. We know that a lot of these riders, English is their second language, or sometimes third or fourth language. And, it's really helpful to have someone there who can kind of communicate and assist with that. And I do want to hop on this comment real quick. So this is from my husband. He is Mindy's biggest fan. He has so many wonderful things to say about her. I actually have to thank him because he pulled the strings to get her on the show for us. But Here he is. Mindy is such a big muscle behind the Jockeys Guild. We really appreciate her so much. And thank you always for your hard work and support, for sure. And that's another thing. You wear a lot of hats over there at the Jocks Guild, which we will definitely get into that as well.
Thanks, Willie.
So, Mindy, you brought up the PDJF as well. So I know in extreme cases, obviously, it would be obvious that this one is a PDJF case instead of a Jockey Guild. But the ones that are a border, how does it get determined who it goes to?
So to back up really quick, the guild we provide that temporary disability benefit is for the first 2 years or until the rider is released by the rider or the doctor to return to riding. Then after that 2-year time frame is when they are eligible for the PDJF. So they go through an application process, and that's something that's decided by their committee with the PDJF that we have no control or input with regards to if they qualify with the PDJF. Now, for our qualifications, during that 2 years, we're able to assess, we receive their medical records and are able to review and make a determination, is this going to be, something that where they're going to qualify for Social Security disability? Is this something where they are not going to be able to have any other form of employment? There's certain things that we can look at, and then we decide if they qualify for the guild. It does not necessarily mean they qualify for the benefits under the PDJF, but it just depends on the case and what recommendations. Anybody that does have a career-ending injury, depending on the severity, obviously they're encouraged to apply for the PDJF after they've, secured their Social Security disability and the benefits that they have under that. Which again is some of these riders, we also encourage them to try and get long-term disability policy. That's separate. We do not have a long-term disability policy.
Where do they go for such a thing like that?
There are different policies out there that people have. It used to be Lloyd's of London, Peterson. There's other ones that they can go through. I will tell you, and this is not just with jockeys, this is with all sports. After COVID, we've seen an increase in insurance policies putting additional age restrictions on those policies because, for athletes are lasting longer in their careers, right? If you will. I mean, obviously we have a lot more jockeys that are going longer, riding longer, having longer careers. But the COVID cost a lot of the insurance companies a lot of money. And we don't think that because of that, they're looking for ways to cut their costs, cut their losses basically. So it's kind of it's difficult. I mean, this is something even with the guild. For years, we attempted to try and get actual health insurance again. At one point, the guild did have, this is prior to my time, but they did have health insurance that they provided to the members, that the members paid for. We tried to get that after the reorganization, and even with $1 million guaranteed funding, we couldn't secure anything because a lot of the insurance companies were concerned about the high risks, obviously, of being a jockey and being affiliated with being a jockey. So that was, it's a challenge that people don't realize. So in order to offset those costs for the riders, we have created the Health and Welfare Reimbursement Program, and that is through our industry partnership agreements that we have with various racetracks. Unfortunately, that's not at every racetrack, but it is at all the tracks in which we do have, or a lot of the tracks in which we do have those agreements as industry partnership agreements. And then riders qualify based on the required number of mounts that they ride at that particular racetrack. And then we provide them with the reimbursement. It's a pro rata amount. It varies each year, but a reimbursement for their out-of-pocket health insurance or health and welfare benefits.
Yeah, which is another amazing benefit. Like, it's just crazy to me what you guys are able to do with so few manpower. I know there's not very many of you, so it's incredible what you can do. And I just didn't know either. I had no idea that you guys have a retirement plan the jockeys, can contribute to. That is so important. So many riders do not think about retirement until it's too late. That's something that people need to be setting aside when they first start in this industry, when you have that bug, when you're like red hot, you know, coming right up, that is when you need to start contributing and it really grows. So I definitely will be getting the word out there to more jockeys myself. I can tell you that.
The crazy thing, and this is, I'm a nerd about the history of the guild, as I said, and when I started, preparing for this, or just thinking, okay, I'm going to talk about guild, fun facts about the guild with you guys. I was reading a letter that Eddie Caro had written. It was his after 25 years of being associated with the guild. He was obviously one of the original like founding fathers of the guild.
Sure.
He was talking at that point about wanting to set up retirement for riders. And this was so the guild was started in 1940, right? That's how long we've been around. And just a few years prior to that, a group of riders had met and they wanted to come up with something because they were sick of like passing the boot and having to like take care of other riders, their families and whatever when they got hurt. Again, 1937, okay? Think about this. At that point, the stewards, and they were on the West Coast, the stewards and some of the racetrack, they had found out that they were meeting, and they told them under no uncertain terms, if any jockey even attended the meetings to form an organization, they would be automatically ruled off the racetracks and not allowed to ride. Okay, so this is 1937. 1940, Samurai he broke his leg. He was in the hospital. Eddie Caro goes in to visit him in the hospital. And that was basically like, they're like, look, we got to do something. Like, this is getting frustrating and we need to figure out a way. So that was 1940. They created the Jockey Community Fund and Guild. And that was the first thing. And I go back to that because it's crazy. So many of their goals then are a lot of the same goals that we're fighting for now. Obviously, we've made huge improvements and like people, and I think that's some of the things that the young riders don't even understand. Everything that the guild has done and does for them in order to make sure that they are riding in a safe environment.
Right.
And a lot of these young riders haven't been in situations where they've had to stick in a situation to make sure that it's their safety or their livelihood.
Right.
The last bit, we had a situation at Parks probably 6 years ago where all the riders were unavailable for entries and unavailable to be named on horses one day. And that was partly because there were some concerns about their on-track insurance and a waiver that they were being required to sign. Fortunately, that was resolved and no racing was actually canceled. They just weren't named on at the time of entry, and we were able to come up with those. Prior to that, the bigger issues was in Indiana and Churchill. A bunch of riders refused to ride because that was when they didn't have even the $100,000 on-track accident coverage.
Right.
And those riders all stuck together, and actually several of them were arrested. Rodney Prescott, Robbie Alvarado, Shane Sellers, and it's crazy. They still have to disclose that on all their records to this day. But they were arrested and it was to make sure the riders were protected. So, since the 40s, the things that we've done is like, lose amount fees, is safety, ambulances, safety rails,
right?
Things that improving the saunas, the conditions of the racetracks, the increase in the scale of weights. Like, we still are, and it's an ongoing battle, right? Like, every time we take 2 steps forward, we take 1 step back, and we keep going and trying to get these new things. But it's just amazing to me that like some of the stuff we're still fighting for. I don't know.
Right. Yeah, but it's incredible the things that the guild has accomplished. And I think this is a great question that we should touch on briefly, if you don't mind. From Grandma Horse Racing, how many jockeys are you responsible for?
Lots. So right now we have approximately 1,050 active, retired, and permanently disabled riders. That number has decreased in the last few years. And part of that is, and I was looking at the numbers the other day, and I should have had this, but I will tell you, it's crazy in the last 4 years. And we looked at something like from 2013 to 2015, and then just 19, and now we're down. Like, every year it's decreasing by about 200 to 300 that are getting licensed, or 200 that are getting licensed each year. So it's not even that people are quitting the guild, it's more that we don't have as many jockeys as you think. With that being said, there's obviously more riders than people think sometimes too. And we have both quarter horse and thoroughbred. I do want to say we represent both quarter horse and thoroughbred jockeys.
Is there any different in the coverage and how much they paid for the quarter horse or thoroughbred?
No. The difference so they pay, it's based on racetrack. Like I said, most of the tracks where we have these industry partnership agreements, they contribute $5 now. And then the others are still $4. Now, and that's the other thing, like our funding only comes from those industry partnership agreements and then the member contributions, their annual dues, and their annual dues are $100 and then the per mount fee.
And how do young jockeys coming in find out about the Jockeys Guild? Is it more like a peer-to-peer thing? Or, I think of like the 9-to-5 job. You sit down, you watch a video and go, you can either accept it or decline it. But this is not like that.
So pre-COVID, I will say it, it's funny, I'm still talking in those terms. Pre-COVID, our regional managers traveled a lot more and were in the racetracks and, they were in the rooms and talking to new riders. We're starting to get back to that level of travel that we used to. But a lot of it also is the peers and the older riders and the guild representatives that are in that room. The thing that's amazing to me is, I say this all the time and I say it to the young riders, the guild is your organization. We are the jockeys. Like, we're the voice of the riders. Our board and our Senate is 100% riders. It's all active jockeys. Right now, our board is Johnny Velasquez and Mike Smith are the co-chairs. You have Javier Castellano, James Flores, who's a quarter horse jock, and Julian LePeroux are our co-chairs. Then you have Rodney Prescott is our secretary. Julian is he has double duty. Julian gets to also be the treasurer right now. And then we have on our board is Joe Bravo and Alex Berzer, Rodney Prescott, Drayden Van Dyke, and James Graham. And I don't think I forgot anybody. Anyway, so we have 10. And then our Senate is based up on, there are 9 individuals that are appointed by the riders for each region. We're broke up into the West, Central, and East. And everything we do, like I said, is based on the riders and their input. These young kids, I don't know, I try to say this too, the older riders and the history, the guys that were in there in the 50s and 60s, I have people call, their wives will call me if a rider passes away and they want to get the guild logo so that they can have their logo on their tombstone, or they want to make sure they're buried with their guild pen or their guild ring. And they carry all this pride. And I want to, and I keep asking for ideas. Anybody can give them to me, how to get the young guys to have that kind of pride. Because it is their organization. I mean, this is and it's something that I always say too, like Kentucky's state motto is united we stand, divided we fall, right? The more members we have and the more people we have in each colony and we're getting the input from those riders, the stronger we are in that colony. The places where we have 100% in that colony, that management listens to us. I mean, we have agreements with them. They work with us more. They're willing to do it. But those are also the colonies where the guys are willing to put in the time too, right? Like they're willing to show up to the autograph sessions. They're willing to do the children's hospital. They're willing to do all the things that are promoting and putting jockeys in a good light.
Right.
So, and I know some of these young riders are like, oh, it's my dark day. I want to go play video games. I want to do, Call of Duty or whatever they're doing. Or I need to go play golf today, or it's my day to like chill out. And they kind of, I don't know, they don't have that community or that sense of wanting to be a part of it that the older or the riders that used to. One thing I say about Johnny, and I do talk about Johnny Velasquez a lot. I mean, he's the person that hired me. I'm grateful for him. Yeah. Well, and not only that, I mean, the amount of hours and the stuff that he does on behalf of the riders, with all due respect, him and Mike don't need the guild. Right? Like they don't need the money. They kind of are strong on their own. But everything that the two of them do, and Johnny especially, day in and day out for the riders is unbelievable to me. I like to say this too, he has been the chairman of the guild since 2006 to present. The only other person that was even as long or remotely close. So Billy Shoemaker was from 1975 to 1988. Nice. And Eddie Acaro was 1946 to 1961. So, I mean, Johnny's up there. And obviously he's done everything he can to to promote the sport and protect the jockeys.
Yeah. Johnny Velasquez is an absolutely amazing individual, incredibly talented, of course, but a wonderful human being, as you said. But I just have to wonder, as you're rattling off all these names of the people that you work with every day, and then every time I talk to you, you're like, oh, I've got to go. That's Irad Ortiz calling, or da-da-da-da. I mean, do you ever get starstruck? You're like surrounded by all of these famous people all the time. Like,
you know, so probably not as much as like when I first went to work for the Guild, you know, I mean, so as a little girl, I loved horse racing, quarter horse. There was a, you know, Seattle Slew was my favorite horse of all time as a little girl because he won the Triple Crown in 1977. That's how old I am. That's when I was born. And like I grew up in the Pacific Northwest, so I was like, ooh, I have this connection to this horse. And then the quarter horse riders, there's a guy named Jockey Martin who was like, up until his injury, he was the leading quarter horse rider of all time. You know, he was somebody I idolized as a little kid. Obviously Mike, Johnny, you know, those guys, I was like, oh. And then Jackie, like this is an example, Jockey Martin had actually gotten in some trouble and he was coming back to ride, and I'm the one that helped him and his wife to get him back to riding.
oh, nice.
And then his wife, when he passed away, actually asked me to speak at his funeral. So it's crazy to me that like my times have changed, like you're saying. You know, I've had some things go on in my life, and I will tell you, I've had some surgeries or some injuries, and the jockeys that reach out to check on me, you know, everyone else would be like in shock, and I'm like, oh, Johnny called today, or Mike called today, or
Yeah.
you know, all these other ones. And then the other thing though is like, I love everybody's families. Like, I get to meet Irad. Like, there's a funny story we like to tell about Irad. The year he was nominated for the Eclipse Award, Angel Cordero had his book. He was supposed to be coming down. He rode at Aqueduct, or he rode in New York that morning, got on a flight. Angel had forgot he needed to pick him up at the airport, and Angel was also presenting at the Eclipse Award. So Angel's like, Mindy, can you go get Irad? And I was like, I barely know him. I've like met the kid once. Like, he's not going to know me, whatever. So I go to the Fort Lauderdale airport and pick him up. And I'm driving around and I like can't see him because, again, this is probably at like 7:30. The Eclipse Awards have already started. Like, I'm thinking he's going to be in a tuxedo, right? Because he's got to go.
Yeah.
I keep driving around like, where are you? He's like, hi, right here. And his English was not good at all at this point.
Yeah.
So I was like, whatever. I finally come back around and he's like holding his bag like in his hands. And I was like, he's like, we're going to the hotel, right? And I was like, oh, like you got to be, and he didn't understand. I was like, you got to have everything on now. So we're in the rental car, I'm driving. He like has to get in the back seat, change. I'm like, oh my God, like whatever. And this kid's like 18, 19 at this point, right? We're driving, and then we get there, we get in, go through the whole thing of getting in the Eclipse Awards. There's like a commercial break. And this is the year that Ramon Dominguez, it was the year that Ramon had been injured that same day. So Johnny and Javier, they were up accepting. We did a break, we get in, and then they read the Apprentice of the Year, and Irad doesn't win it. I'm so angry at that point, and like I didn't even know the kid, but like I was mad that he didn't win. And then, you know, since then, like we've joked about it, he's become like definitely one that I was close. And then when Jose got here, and then some of these kids like I've had, and I say kids, and they're not anymore. They're clearly adults, but like Ricardo's one that I've had. Santana is one I've had since he was like 17, 18 years old.
Right.
And Willie knows there's a bunch of these kids too that like, I'm not the stereotypical attorney. I don't treat them like they're jockeys. I look at them like, especially some of them when they are 17, 18, 19, I get real bossy. I turn into a real big mom, even though I have no children at all. And so, yeah.
You've got 1,000 children. What are you talking about?
Right? Like, yes, some of the older ones even act like children. But no, and it's, I guess I'm fortunate though. I love meeting all their families. I do get close with a lot of their families. I do get close with their children, the riders. I take a lot of things personal. If somebody attacks a jockey, either on social media or whatever, I take a personal exception to a lot of the things. When people are like, oh, they're fixing races, or I'm like, what are you talking about? They're literally out there risking their lives. Like, we don't get paid if they don't, you know, or, you know, if we have to cancel for whatever reason, safety concerns, weather conditions, you know, it's always the jockey that they want to go after. And nobody ever really stops to think, wait, why did they do this? where the track condition's really that bad, they have to be, or they wouldn't do it, because they don't get paid if they're not riding. If we don't have racing, we don't get paid. It's not like any other athlete where you have a contract and you're getting paid whether games get played or not.
Yep.
So, yeah, sorry, I went off on another like.
No, it's such a
all
valid point though. You hear it all the time, like, oh, these jockeys are wimpy, da da da. I mean, come on, they want to get paid.
Right.
Well, that's a good subject too. I've talked to jockeys that say the tracks put it on them when it's horrible weather and there's no shot of them racing. The tracks won't cancel; they'll make the jockeys cancel, and then they'll put out on social media that the jockeys refuse to ride. How do we change that so that the social media doesn't,
So we have asked, and over the years, the guild has presented various like inclement weather agreements, meaning that these would be set standards for the horsemen, the riders, and the racetracks to come together. We have always and continue to ask if there's any situation where it's asked for voting, that it be done anonymously. Unfortunately, we do have some race management at certain racetracks that will come in and put pressure on the guys, and they'll still race. If certain guys are not comfortable, they'll tell them they can go home. And a lot of that, it's frustrating because I do feel that, like, just like you said, the management should be making those decisions. We had a situation. We've had a situation where they canceled, they blamed the rider, and then, blamed one particular guild member. A lot of times it's the guild representatives that are the ones that are serving as the voice with management, so they tend to be the ones that get blamed. And then those jocks will get exiled. They'll start getting less mounts. The horsemen will not ride them. It's crazy how it all falls back on the riders. And you would think that the horsemen would have the same level of concerns, especially like the air quality situation, or either the air quality or temperatures. Like horses, you should be concerned about heat issues. So I think that that's something we keep trying to do. I don't know, maybe HISA, there have been some discussion, maybe they're going to come up with some national standards. Again, that would be safety.
What is your relationship? What is your relationship with HISA, and how do you guys work together? You don't work together.
We do. So and I don't know, there's a couple up here. We've had a couple questions and I don't want to miss anybody, but the HISA, so when it was first, the idea was first approached, we are supportive of a uniform set of rules and regulations so that the guys are under one set of rules, whether it's the scale of weights, whether it's the riding crop. I mean, we were dealing with, 31, 32 different sets of rules throughout the country. So we have always been supportive of the uniform idea. When the committees were created, they actually put Johnny Velasquez on the racetrack safety committee to provide input on the base, serve as a voice for the jockeys. Then when it came time for the implementation, we were part of one of the lawsuits, the lawsuit in Louisiana. And we were concerned about how it was being implemented and how quickly it was being done, and if they had followed the rulemaking process. Since that time, we have had multiple discussions, right after the lawsuit and up until we withdrew from the lawsuit, we were trying to figure out a way to resolve it, because we do realize that HISA is an authority that is going to be continue to exist. So through our board, Terry Meeks's hard work, Johnny's, Mike's input, we've been able to create a working relationship with Lisa Lazarus, Mark Guilfoyle, who used to be with the Kentucky Horse Racing Commission, is now working for HISA. We have a great relationship with him. And then actually one of our former longtime regional managers has went to work for HISA, serving as the jockey advocate, Jeff Johnston. He was one of our regional managers. So, and then the national medical director, Pete Hester, is somebody else that we have a very strong working relationship with. And then right now one of the things that we're hoping to work on and we're, focusing on is jockeys' mental health. This is something we can do, and what we can do hopefully for the racing as a whole. But right now we're looking at the riders, the things that we can do short-term and long-term. In light of the first few months of the year, we lost 2 jockeys with their own lives. and that was very challenging. They're not the first to. We've had other jockeys who have taken their own life, but due to their families or decisions or privacy reasons, they haven't been shared necessarily. Fortunately, we're grateful that these two families helped bring some awareness to something that I think we've all been struggling, the mental health concerns that, riders struggle with. There's a lot of contributing factors. And again, that's something that Heist is kind of helping us, what we can do as an industry to provide some sort of resources.
Oh yeah, that's huge. That's something Sean works a lot with here on the show, and then, trying to bring to people's attention, all of this jockey bashing takes its toll.
And I'll sound like if people ever hear me, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Nathan Harick or like the Jockey Cam.
Yes.
In 2019, or I'm sorry, 2021, he came out with a short, like little film, independent film. It's about 20 minutes called The Fall.
I love that film.
I've watched it. I can't tell you how many times. And, somebody was like, oh, you watched it too many times. And I'm like, I still get emotional every time I see it, because I think of a different jockey that is going through one of those things, at that moment. And for those that haven't seen it yet, it's basically like a 20-minute film. I recommend you look for it. It's on YouTube. You can get it. It's basically a night in the life of a jump jockey. You show him ride, he falls, he's hurt, he doesn't want anybody to know he's hurt, he hides his injury, he's taking medication to mask his pain. While he's driving home, he's starving, he hasn't got to eat, he's trying to make weight. In the meantime, he's getting a call from the trainer. The trainer says the owner's taking him off. He's now lost his mount. Social media, he's getting bashed, saying, oh, he fixed the race, that was a fall, he's a joke. Everything else that's going through his mind. His wife calls and, she says, oh, I made you dinner. He's like, oh, that sounds great. He's still driving home. You can see, he's thinking he should take his life. He's questioning things. And then he gets home and he can't even eat the food that she's made for him. But he doesn't tell her he can't eat it. He throws it away because he has to make sure he can make weight the next day. And there isn't a rider that hasn't been through that there is not one rider that's riding right now that has not been through that night. And so that's something I applaud Nathan and I applaud them for bringing to the light, because there's some stuff that they've done again in England that they're a little bit ahead of us on, but I hope that we can create similar programs here in the US.
Absolutely.
There was a question, I do want to address this. There was a question as to why we're not a Teamster or a union, or why we are not unionized technically. Part of that is because jockeys are considered independent contractors. We're not employees. The case is, there are arguments why I feel like we could be considered employees. We've tried over the years. There was a couple times where we thought potentially the Department of Labor would recognize us, but we have not been successful, because again, and it's a catch-22. Sometimes riders want to be independent contractors. They want to be able to have their say, do their thing. But on the other, sometimes we're treated as employees. Like we're told where we have to be, when we have to be there, what we can wear, how long you're under these things. And then the question becomes, well, who are we an employee of?
Right.
Is it the trainer? Is it the owner? Is it the racetrack? And so that was, it's been something that's been an ongoing discussion. Unfortunately, at this point, we don't have that ability to actually formally unionize. And because of that, some of the things that we have to do, we're not afforded the same benefits or the same, we don't have the same methods that a labor union would in our negotiations. We're not able to do collective bargaining, and we don't have the same protections that are afforded to the unions. Sorry, that was these funny questions you can get out, but I try to cover. There's a lot of misconceptions out there, and I love having this opportunity to explain anything or any questions that anybody has at any time. I love to be able to answer those questions.
Well, and that's where I posted about the Sean Parker being out in injury today, and some people comment, oh, he's worth this amount of money or whatever, and people don't understand that he's not getting anything right now.
Right.
Besides,
No,
besides if he's a member, obviously, you know.
250 from us and 200 from Indiana. Yeah, where are we? Indiana.
Yeah. So that's what's important too, is people don't understand that, you know, they're not getting what other people would get. And that's another question too. We say about young jockeys. Is it something that they can sign up for before they even take their first mount?
No, not typically. They need to at least be licensed either as an apprentice or professional jockey. It's something I say, but you know, again, in our sport, we're, to my knowledge, the only sport where an apprentice will be competing directly with professional and Hall of Fame jockeys. But no, they have to at least have one mount and be in good standing, and then they fill out the application to become a member.
And then let's talk about you yourself. What is your daily schedule like?
All right.
The,
yeah, this is gonna be a lot.
that's the like fun thing, I guess. I thank God I don't have to be a stereotypical attorney. Like I'm not setting in the office billing hours. I can literally, you know, I could be at a racetrack on the backside at 5 o'clock in the morning, or I can be getting phone calls. Terry and I can, you know, start getting phone calls at 6, 7 o'clock in the morning to 10, 11 o'clock at night. Not as bad as I used to, but, you know, there was a point even when like Hollywood was running or Los Alamitos, you know, those quarter horse races, they're running late at night. You know, this is one again, and and this is the other thing. Can be one day I can be at the, you know, biggest race. I could be at Breeders' Cup, right? And then the next day I can be at like Turf Paradise. I mean, you know, I'm thinking on the West, or, you know, I was on the West Coast and I would be the Breeders' Cup, and then that weekend turn around and go to like Rialito, which is in Tucson. I mean, that's just one weekend that I remember specifically. You know, I was Breeders' Cup, and then we turn around and go to Arizona, and then, you know, be back in Texas or small quarter horse meet, fair meet, back to Keeneland. And I love that, actually. I grew up on really small tracks. We didn't talk about that part. I guess I kind of skipped over that. My parents own quarter horse and thoroughbred both.
Nice.
When my mom was a single mom for a period of time, and at that point, she really she worked in the animal health industry and became fascinated by racehorses and the legs and, you know, things. And we were living in Utah. She worked for a company called Parker Livestock. We went to the cutter races, which are like on snow. They're behind, you know, they have like a chariot kind of thing behind them. We did cutter races, and then she started going back to Le Bois. We would drive back every weekend for her to go to Le Bois. We would go to other tracks. And I was probably, like I said, 4 or 5. And at that point, I was not afraid of anything. I would end up in the stalls with like half the racehorses, like that, driving golf carts, all the things as a little kid you're definitely not supposed to do now. Probably shouldn't have done then, but I did that. And then my parents own, like I said, own quarter horse and thoroughbred both. We ran in the Pacific Northwest, Turf Paradise, to Arizona, California. So I love all racetracks. I mean, my Labor Day weekend, people are like, oh, you're going to be in Saratoga. And I'm like, nope, I'm going to be in Ruidoso at the quarter horse meet, you know, at the All Americans. So
nice.
I guess that's one thing about me. I do love the fact that I get to be at every racetrack. Like I can go to every racetrack, see every horse. I still fangirl. And it's funny, I don't fangirl the jockeys as much as I do the horses still. I totally fangirl over horses at this point. And I'm grateful for that. I've been able to experience those things, you know, like we were talking earlier, like I was there when Zenyatta beat the boys, and then when Blame beat Zenyatta, and I got to experience Goldakova, and I've got to see like all these things. You know, the Triple Crown, I got to see American Pharoah. I got to see, you know, it's things that I only dreamed about as a kid. And I do thank God every day that I get to combine my passion with my career. Like and as an attorney, I don't have to question my morals. I don't have to ask myself, am I representing somebody that has done something bad? I don't have to question anything I'm doing. I'm fighting for the rights of jockeys and the safety of horses. Like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nothing I ever have to worry about and question. So I'm grateful I get to do that. Back to what my day is, you know, I can get the best call, and 2 minutes later I can get the worst call. It's just like our sport. It's an emotional roller coaster. I I told you guys just about every single day we have a jock go down. The calls, it's basically like, are they walking? Are they talking? Can they move? They feel? Anything else we can figure out. I mean, on average, we have 2 killed every year and 2 paralyzed every year. That's something that, you know, again, because this is the emotional side of me, I get really attached to everybody. I cry with their families. You would think like at this point I would stop crying. Like, you know, at some point it wouldn't be as big of, but they're still, you know, I still get really emotional. And I want to make sure that these jocks are taken care of and that they're able to provide for their families. And then that they know what they're going to do after or at the end of their career, or if they have a career-ending injury.
So when you get a call like that, how quickly do you get that call, and what's your involvement from there, or are you just waiting to hear back?
It depends. So what Jamie was alluding to earlier, we have 4 regional managers, and then Terry and myself and 4 women in the office, right? That's for the whole country. You know, everybody has different personalities. Like I said, there's some of these kids I've had since they were 16, 17, 18 years old. They'll reach out to me, or they're valid or something. Or there's somebody that Terry will be close to, because the one thing too, Terry is like a third generation racetracker, if you will. Like, he grew up on the racetrack. His dad was his dad had early fires book. Terry's done just about everything, front office wise, worked for management. So he has all his connections and relationships. Our regional managers, most of them are retired jockeys, or our newest one, Keith, he grew up on a racetrack as well. I mean, his father's a legendary trainer, Leo O'Brien. This is Keith O'Brien. The other regional managers are Daryl Hare, John Beach, Herbie Rivera. And then we have 2 that help us on the side, or, you know, doing stuff. As Joel Campbell is retired. And then Willie does a lot too. I mean, to be honest, Willie does a lot now. He's kind of stepping into a different role as his transitioning, and definitely not done riding, but as he's starting to consider what he's going to do in the future. So to answer your question, I got, again, distracted. It depends on whose family is, who's close, who's there, who saw the spill happen. One thing we do get is we get an incident report if it happens during the race. So, like, for example, Deshawn's didn't happen during the race, but Joel Campbell just happened to be watching the races and saw it happen. So he calls Deshawn. I called Deshawn because, like, Deshawn's another person that I'm close with. And then, again, this is me being mom and dad, whatever. If I see a spill at all, or I get a report, I call and text, because here's the thing. A lot of these riders, they'll say, oh, they're okay. They made it back. They walked on their own accord. They got in the room. They're fine. And then they're not. And that's one thing some of these riders I do worry about too. They'll hide their injuries because, again, if they're hurt, nobody's going to ride them, and they don't have their business. So they'll hide their injury and probably ride when they shouldn't. So I do tend to check and call. So if we haven't heard from them, I call them. We had a situation probably a month ago. Terry and I got a call on a Sunday from a rider and his wife that they were having issues with the hospital where the jockey was at that time. And Terry and I were on the phone for about 5 hours trying to help that jock get transported, get things figured out. So I would say a lot of ours is instant, but it's not always. I mean, I might find out about it 4 or 5 days later. Yeah. It kind of just depends. That is one thing. If there's any riders listening, or anybody that, if you haven't heard from us, reach out, call, have your family member call somebody, because we can't always know every single accident or incident that happens. We're trying, but that's also kind of on them sometimes to make sure that they're following up and make sure that, it's just like any other insurance claim, if you will. You have to report it. Like, we don't know always. So if you haven't heard anything, to let us know so we can know how to help you, how to best help.
Yeah, and Grandma Horse Racing has a great comment here that's so true. The jockeys are lucky to have you. I can hear and see your passion. And I'll say that as well. I mean, I know jockeys personally who have gone down in a race or in the morning or whatever, and the Jock Skill did, so much more extracurricular, like off, just like helping that person find the right things as well. You know what I mean? Not even necessarily included in their benefits, just like, okay, let me point you to this resource and let's get you hooked up with these people and whatnot to make sure that your needs are being taken care of. So we really, really appreciate all the things that you do, particularly Mindy, but the Jocks Guild in general. I mean, you guys are like the last defense that these jockeys have, you know? So thank you so much for all your hard work.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and the one thing, I guess that's one thing I will say real quick too about the benefit of HISA, right? Like there's been a lot of negative things about HISA, and I do want to make sure that there are a lot of great, there are, benefits to HISA as well. And one of them is something that you just kind of alluded to. By creating this national medical director that they have, Dr. Pete Hester, he is in the process of creating a network nationwide. So, right, like you guys know, jockeys are traveling. They may not even get hurt in their home. They may be at a racetrack where their family's not there, whatever. They need to get back to where they're from. And he's trying to work to get specialists in that area, whether it's neurologists, whether it's orthopedic surgeons, and what we can do to work together to make sure that there's this network for the riders. So I think that is something that is great that is one of the benefits of having HISA.
Well, we are well over our half hour, but I feel like I could talk to you. I only got to like 2 questions. We'll have to have you back on for sure. Sean, is there anything that you want to ask her before we let her go?
Well, yeah, I do have more, but I'll end it with, because you said about jockeys and how they hide their injuries. And I know the other day there was a thing with Javier Castellano. He was on the stretcher. He was back and he won the next race.
Right.
And it was kind of a lot of positive, but then a lot of like the concussion in the NFL type worries. Do you have anything like that, or do you think there should be anything implemented a little kind of like the concussion protocol in the NFL?
Oh, absolutely. Like we've been working for concussion protocols. The guild itself, way before the thought of HISA, the implementation of this. This is something that we've been working closely with the racetracks in Kentucky and other organizations in the industry, along with Keeneland and the University of Kentucky, the New York Institute of Technology, and then Dr. Kelly Ryan from MedStar with all the other medical professionals. They work to create a concussion protocol and return to ride guidelines for concussions. That is in the process of being discussed and finalized with HISA. We do want there to be evaluations. Now, right now, a lot of sports, they rely on the SCAT-5. Obviously, with the changes in the improvement of technology and medical understandings, that has, the way we address concussions has changed, right? So I think that's something we definitely want and evolve. We do need a quick evaluation. If a rider is obviously concussed or there's any questions, there are medical professionals that should be evaluating. We've said this because it's not only their safety, it's also all the other riders and all the other horses in that race, right? And then this is something, again, I'm pretty passionate about, the repetitive head injuries. We've seen a jockey that I was very close to as well, James Lopez, was one that had suffered repetitive head injuries, and there was no restrictions on his return to ride. And he had long-term, he's since passed away, but that is something that we've seen what's happened with the repetitive head injuries. So absolutely we want those. And then, to be honest with you, I can tell you even 10 years ago, I know riders that went down, they got up, they said, yeah, I'm fine. Nobody really checked on the nurse. They went back out and rode. And then the next day, they didn't even remember their spill. Wow. Like somebody was asking this person, oh, are you all right? How you feel? And he's like, why does everyone keep asking me? Clearly I'm fine. And he had zero recollection of the spill the day before. So yeah, we definitely want that. The situation with Javier, and it's something that, and especially in New York, I will say they have people that are there evaluating. The riders know. There are some older riders, and most of the older riders, they know. They know their bodies. They know what they're going to do. There are younger riders, they know too. But it's whether or not they want to share it. So the concussion thing, though, is a little different because there's a lot of times if you're concussed, you don't even know you're concussed. You think you're all right. So, yeah, to answer your question, yes, we believe in it. Yes, we want it. I don't know. We're hoping we can get something uniform protocol set in place for the whole country.
Awesome. All right, Sean. You got anything else? I don't want to cut you
Oh,
off.
like I said, I got a ton, but we're not going to keep her another hour.
Barry's going to be listening. He's going to be like, we should have put a tongue tie on you. You talked to me.
No, this is awesome.
There's so much to, that's why I tell everyone, there's
Yeah.
so much more about the guild that people don't realize. And
Right.
again, it's something I just want the young riders to understand, that we are their organization. Like, we are here for them. We're only as strong as they are. And in anything and everything, pretty much people have full access to me. You can reach me on my cell phone, my email, social media. Social media is not the best. People try and send me messages on like Instagram and Facebook. I'm horrible at checking those, so don't do that. But pretty much every rider can get a hold of me at any hour. So any jockey that's listening, feel free to contact me if you have any questions too.
Yes, please do. And feel free to contact us at HRT too. I have always been a huge supporter and fan of the Jockeys Guild. I've never been a rider, but my parents were both jockeys. I'm married to a jockey. So being in the horse racing industry my whole life, I've just seen firsthand what this organization does for the riders. And like I said, really, that's your last line of defense. Like, you think that a racetrack or the betting public or an ownership team, whatever, no one else is going to have your back like these people, So 100%, please get involved in the Jocks Guild if you are not already. Lots of benefits that we went into here. There's even more we could discuss, so we will have to have Mindy back on for sure. See, Sean, we knew this was going to be a good show. So.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again for all your time, Mindy. You were wonderful, and we will have you back on soon.
Have a great night, guys.
Good night.
Thank you.
Wow, she's awesome, huh?
Yeah, we learned a lot. I mean,
I know. Yeah, and I've known about the guild forever. Like, I feel like I'm like a guild expert, and I was like, nope, I just learned like 25 new things. So.
Yeah. I mean, we went 55 minutes and
I know.
15 minutes before the show we were talking too. So
I know. Good
yeah.
stuff. Yeah. Well, it's nice to have that inside look. I mean, we've obviously had a lot of jockeys on the show who have talked about the guild and what it's done for them, but it's nice to get a more behind the scenes picture and get some more, hard, fast data of what exactly it is they do, instead of just like, oh, this is my story, they helped me. This is more like, this is what they do for everyone. So pretty cool stuff. Oh,
yeah, absolutely.
We got comments here. Bring her back. We will. I promise. She's a very busy woman, but we'll twist her arm. I'll just pull my connection with Willie again.
There you go.
All right. What else have we got going on, Sean?
So the guys will be back tomorrow. I'm not sure. I mean, it was still Terry and Charles today. Maybe it's still tomorrow. I'm imagining Belmont Park, but I'm not 100% sure. We're off. I know next Monday, Julie and I will be back, and Victor Carrasco will be our guest. He was on Players Edge podcast before, but he was never on a Horse Center show. So we'll have him on Monday, and then we'll release Tuesday and Wednesday as I find out on socials. At Horse Race Today, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok.
Yes, and Sean, you've been killing it lately. Let me tell you, Sean.
I haven't been killing it. There's been jockeys and stuff that have been killing it with the wins and stuff. I just put a picture of them and say, hey, this is what they've done, and everybody loves that. So,
well, hey, the people love it. So good job staying on top of all that.
Well, I think everybody wants that sport and horse racing. They want it to collide. We want sports bettors. The only way to do that is to make the horses and the jockeys, which are two of the stars, they're the ones out there on the track, make them more personable. Sure. And 100%. They're available to do that. We just don't do it as a sport. So that's definitely, I mean, Deshaun today, I've actually slacked. He got hurt last week or whatever, and I was on vacation and stuff. I texted him today. I put it on Facebook and stuff, and he's hurt and down and out, and you couldn't even tell by the text message. Just in good spirits, I'll be back, and there's a GoFundMe page if anybody wants to help, because we're talking, he's only getting $400, $500 a week at this point. He's going to be out, I'd say, a couple months at least.
Yeah, it sounds like it was a rough spill. I didn't see it firsthand, but poor Deshaun, and what a class act. I mean, he's a George Wolf winner for good reason, right?
Yeah, and I would say anybody that's giving the jockeys slack, giving them when they're hurt like that, reach out to them and just wish them luck too, because I'm sure it's gonna, mean the world to them.
Oh yeah, and talk about mentally stressful. That's something. I mean, when Pablo was on, when he had his finger injury, and he's like seeing all of my horses win without me like breaks my heart.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
watching that is not easy, I'm sure. But Deshaun, just in case you're watching, we love and adore you, and we send all of the healing vibes your way. Can't wait to see you back out on the track. We know you'll be back. I saw he released something saying, "I'll be back. Don't count me out." So
Yeah, right away. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
He was in good spirits and everything, and
yeah.
and I was like, absolutely. I never doubted that you would be back, but just
Yeah.
we're still thinking about you at home. It's not just when you're a racetrack that we reach out. We want to reach out all the time. So.
For sure. Awesome. Okay. Well, Sean already told you, but please follow us on all of the social media. That just helps us bring you more great content and wonderful guests like the one that we had on tonight and like the ones we'll have next week. We are Horse Race the number 2 day on pretty much every social media platform except YouTube. But you're probably already watching us on YouTube. It looks like 90% of the people are. So please do not forget to do that. That helps us more than you know. So we hope that we see you on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook. But no matter what, we hope we see you in the
Winner's Circle.
Winner's Circle. Have a good night, everyone.